Hey everyone, welcome to Dave's Bonsai. On today's episode, we are in the middle of the new pine forest up at the cabin. Now that was a fun way to open up a show. My son Toby recently got the drone and he's been shooting some footage around his home in Stillwater area. And we had to go up to the cabin to do the annual taking in of the dock and the lift for the boats. And you know what? We had some of the best weather I can ever recall closing up the cabin. We had 60 degrees both on Friday and Saturday when we were there, just this past Friday and Saturday. Came home later last night, but I've got a lot more footage to show you because that intro was fun, but we played around with that drone a couple of times and it was absolutely fantastic. So one of the things I did when I was up there is I've been eyeballing some quaking aspen trees up in the property that we have the cabin on. And so I dug out a few of the quaking aspens. Late in the season, the roots should be done doing their growing with this time of year. And so I'm just going to put them in a great big pile of soil here in the box and just hope they survive. I try not to disturb too many of the fine feeder roots. A lot of times with the quake and aspen, you know, they all grow into one species, right? It's one deal. So since my neighbors just cranked up their lawnmower and it's probably too loud, let me get these into the pot. And while I'm doing that, let's go back to the cabin and we'll talk about that forest. It's the new pine forest because, well, I told you out there on the scene, so let's go back up to Brainerd. When you can take your time and walk through the forest, there's nothing like just being able to stop and stare at a tree. And when you're in this young forest, we've got everything from a couple-year-old saplings all the way up to these trees that are now 10 and some of them even 12 feet tall. And this one right here just caught my eye, again, because of the unnatural looking but natural curve, because something created this. So if you can look right here, this was like a double trunk pine tree and it snapped off. Did a deer do that? Did a human do that? And here's an old branch. It's still alive. We'd cut that off. We're gonna cut this off, but look at the movement on this trunk. It went over here and now it's bending back up here towards the sun. And you've got this already massively curly tree, and because they're so young and flexible, I can go like this, and we can twist and have fun. And then if you'll notice, this is a back bud on old wood. So this wasn't the original whorl, this was a back bud. Now, my only question with some of these trees in this new young forest is, I'm not sure what kind of pine tree this is. So I'll have to do some searching with my identification app and see if I can find out what this tree is, but usually my app just says it's some kind of pine. But there's a really cool example of how something in nature, in the middle of this new pine forest, made this tree grow up all crazy and gnarly. And we can get some inspiration for our bonsai with trees just like this. I might tag this one, and we're gonna come back and get this one in the spring. look at the branches on this tree. I mean, so not a typical conical pine tree of any sort, but for some reason, it's just growing all of these branches, all these limbs. So cool what you can find out here. Here's another great example of a tree that really is struggling. So this tree broke right in here. Something really nasty happened right here. Look at this. This was a new bud a couple years ago maybe. That's now died off. But look at that weird death right there, or breakage. Now this branch took off, but it's dying. This one right here is dying. Look, I just ripped it right off. I didn't really mean to do that, but that's how sensitive this one is right here. But look at this tree. It still wants to survive, right? There's new buds. There's some old needles that are going to fall off now. It's probably the second or third year needles. But this thing is striving to stay alive. Now we got a double branch here, but this real thick thing here. Look at this. Maybe this was an old part of this tree. Now something knocked that off. Who knows what? So even in nature, we get some of these really bizarre looking trees. And sometimes our bonsai look a little bit more contrived, but it happens in nature as well. We could do this for days. We could find trees out here every 10 feet and talk about them. This is just so cool. Oh, this is like a kid in a candy store. So somewhere about 5 to 10 years ago, they cut down a whole section of the forest right back behind our cabin area up at the Gull River. There are trees that are still fallen pieces of the trunks that are laying around. Some of these oak trees, you might notice, there's clusters of oak. It's actually new suckers coming up from the old oak stumps that they cut away. And then all these pine trees. Now, I still don't know if they planted these pine trees or if this all happened naturally, because we don't have this many pines in this forest. So I think they possibly dropped some seeds, planted a few yearlings possibly. I guess I don't know. I'm just really surprised to see this many pines. In all the years I've come up here, this is a lot of pines. And they're mainly red pines, and then this, again, Scots pine, a Scotch pine, I'm not really sure. We have one right over here to my left, you're right, that has, again, short needles, and it's not looking like a black spruce or a white spruce. It looks kind of Scotch pine looking. And then, of course, again, the oak clusters, and then the other more Scotch pine behind me, and all the red pine. It's just a really great place to be. So when you come out here, you're visiting the cabin, and you just take a walk. It's only about a half a mile walk from the cabin, if that. And it's just really cool to come see all the new growth in the trees. And if you just look for about 5-10 minutes walking through here, you see curves on the trunk, you see weird branches. Some whorls are big, some are small, some have 3, some have 7. And it's so peaceful in here too. When that wind blows, you get a little bit of that pine feel, that pine wind sound, a little bit of ruffling in the leaves now because it's fall. Such a great place to hang out at the cabin. I love walking up here. And we're gonna find some trees possibly today, right? We're gonna find a tree that I can maybe harvest. I think we should keep walking. It is too beautiful. We're at the end of October. It's the end of October, and it's low 60s for highs today and tomorrow, and actually for the next 3 or 4 days. This is pretty rare, this close to Halloween. So glad we could come up to the cabin here this late in the month. We sure had a lot of fun with that drone. So that field, yeah, was cut down probably 10, in the last 5 to 10 years. And the more we talked about it, they must have planted some trees there. I don't know if they threw a whole bunch of pine cones out there and hoped for the best. They must have planted something. So it's a quite expansive area, several acres of land that fun to walk through and see all the pine trees with all the curves and the branches broken off, and really, really kind of a fun day with the drone and checking out all those trees. And I really still have to figure out what that tree variety is, if it's a Scots pine or what that is. So back to what we're doing here, you'll notice I had to do some unique potting. And the reason why I had to put my trees in the pots this way is because the roots are all connected in a quake and aspen. So you can see the roots, some of them are sticking up right here. So I had to make some makeshift pots where I put these together so the roots were long enough to fit into the buckets to come home. And so this is the native soil that these grow in, with very sandy soil up there in the Brainerd Lakes area where these trees were growing. And so I just want to make sure I keep as many of the roots as possible not disturbed. I have 2 more in this one right here. So again, here's one of the roots, and here's some feeder roots here that I didn't want to disturb. So let's get these in here. So again, as often is with the case with the quake and aspen, these 2 trees are connected. And we got a root that goes from way over here to way over here. So we tried to preserve as much of the original root structure, like I said, as possible. And I've had some good luck in the past bringing these trees up from my cabin. And the roots are kind of like in a nature's cold frame right now, except for we've had these really warm days. So we've been getting up into the 60s, and we're supposed to be near 60 through Halloween, which is tomorrow, and the first couple days of this next week here. So the soil won't go up and down too much in temp, but I run the risk, of course, of these trees thinking that it's spring and wanting to do something new. They were free to me. They're from our back cabin yard. They shoot up everywhere. Some we keep for older trees, and some we tear down. So I have plenty of dirt from up there. Again, the native soil. We're just going to make sure that all the roots are covered real well. Now my hope is, of course, that these will freeze solid and they will come back in the spring. Now, with the earth changing as much as it is and all the warm weather we have, I run the risk, of course, of these roots just kind of struggling and being confused, and all the stress I just created it. But again, it's the time of year where there's very little, the roots are not like massively expanding. All our trees are gaining all that energy for the spring with whatever photosynthesis is left. But as you can see, these trees no longer have any foliage on them. So I got a nice cluster of 5, 6, or 7 here, a double that was here in this single. We're gonna put this all into a forest. I've been talking with my friend from Minnesota Bonsai Society, Nick, and Nick and I both were talking real recently about having a quake and aspen forest. Usually if I have dieback on one of these or 2 of these main trunks, I get some suckers to come up because they are very known for growing their suckers. And again, everything's connected. These will all be together someday and fuse together. Definitely this forest right here. So I'm gonna put this in the spot where I hope the critters won't get it. That's my next fear. So I think I'm gonna put some Irish soap. Have you heard of that hint? Some Irish soap. You can put some dryer sheets, the mothballs. We're gonna put some of those things on here so the critters leave these alone today. I might even individually wrap some of these with the wrap I bought just so they leave them alone. So I gotta see if I can lift this thing and put it down into my storage area. So we'll show you that next. But before that, up at the cabin, we had some more fun with the drone. Let's go back to the cabin and see what we were doing. So a quarter of a mile the other way from the cabin, we have this nice little large swamp area. and we have tons and tons of the sphagnum moss. So I took a few photographs earlier, and so just how they mound up around each individual larch tree. It's just like its own little bonsai pot, except for built up. It's pretty fascinating. So these larches lost most of their leaves probably in the last week, but from the road there's still some golden yellows you can see. One of my favorite trees. I keep getting more and more of them, and I can't wait to go collect more up north with my buddy Steve. Great place for a little hike, but you better bring your boots up to your knees because it does get a little bit soggy. Another great little nook and cranny up at the cabin. It's such a great place to go walk and take a little adventure. I wish I was here about a week or so ago. It would have been just bright golden yellow, but maybe next year. The walk continues. Always doing my best to work smarter, not harder. I got a couple 2x4s for my ramp. I brought it down with the old wheelie and got it in position to slide up the ramp and put it in here in what is our strawberry patch, and then this is our lettuce area. So we're done with lettuce for the season, of course, and so we're gonna keep this in here. It's just off the ground a little bit, and I could put some leaves in here to heal this in a little bit. I'm gonna snug up my Siberian pine here, and now it's level with this, and we'll be able to keep an eye on this. And hopefully the voles will keep it away. The lawnmower's getting louder, so let's go back to the cabin and show you some fishing that my son Toby and I got to do. We're gonna clunk, right? 5, 3, 2, 1. What in the world did you just do there here on the October 28th in a kayak?
Got a nice, real cold bass. My rod's gonna fall in the water. There we go.
Oh my, hold that one up for me here. Look at that, happy October 28th.
Happy October.
That is sweet, let me get a picture too. This is
Wow.
video right now.
That's bigger than I
So we'll let this soak in and we'll give it some more water in a little bit, but we're hoping this tree will stay here all winter long, freeze up. I'll water it until it's frozen solid, and hopefully the voles will keep it away. So those who've been watching the channel for a while know that I have a serious vole issue. So I'm gonna put some dryer sheets here. I'm gonna put maybe some Irish Spring soap. I hear that works with the mice anyway. I've tried mothballs in the past, and we'll go ahead and do that. I've got a really nice main trunk tree right here that's about a little over pencil thick, and a whole bunch of other ones. I hope we have success. It's always super risky this time of year, but we'll water a little bit later on, get some dryer sheets. We'll maybe put some tape around here, and we're just gonna hope for the best for these poplars. I'm inside the second garden of the 3 new garden beds I made this past spring, and in here we had some cucumbers and some beans. I'm trying to think what else was in here. We have Brussels sprouts still harvesting. They harvest late in the season, and we've got a whole bunch here now on the plants that we get to start harvesting in the next couple of weeks. But I already put my first tree in here, so this is one of my Amur maples, and we're gonna put this inside of this only because, not that it would protect it from deer because they'll just reach right over here, but I did have some chewing on these guys last year. But again, I think I'll maybe put a little bit of a tree wrap around these guys just to protect the bases, and just hope they just kind of leave this one alone. I could even put a burlap sack or something over this. I do have some burlap sacks that I might be able to put over these just to protect them, and just so the critters leave them alone. That's the main thing. So we got this here snug in the corner. I also brought this down with the use of the pulley to make sure I don't completely hurt myself with all these movements. So the fall cleanup continues. We still have work to do. We've just been blessed with such great weather. We've been taking our time. My first update for today is the larch forest that I collected last year with my friend Steve. This was up north, different place than my Brainerd Cabin Lakes area. But this one now is in its prime color. Most of the trees up in the Brainerd Lakes area are pretty much losing at least 50% of their foliage is gone. The color is not quite as pretty as it was just a couple weeks ago. But this is what we're after right here when we get this beautiful large color, and these will all fall off pretty soon. So that's my update on one of my larches. It's just the one that has the most color, and we'll see if we show you some more here before the episode ends. Beautiful. I'm in a sea of sphagnum moss. Not quite as pretty of a location as we were up there up at the cabin. So that larch forest was the first time Toby, my son, had been on a larch forest. When you walk 10 feet away from each other or 15 feet and you're moving, and you get all the movement of the larch forest because it's on a big old floating bog, right? And so we got some great sphagnum moss, probably enough to last me for a good year or two, depending upon, of course, what projects I'm using it for. So a fun trip all in all, getting some sphagnum moss, locating some really cool trees, and just seeing the forest through the eyes of the drone in so many different locations. That was an absolute blast. I finally got my chance to play with the drone on the dock. So we were sitting on the dock and my son said, "Hey Dad, it's your turn." And so here's some footage from when I had the controllers. Not quite as smooth, but I had a blast. That was sure fun to play around with. I can't wait till we go out to Bonsai Acres and do some filming out there at that tree farm. Won't look anything like, of course, the trees that are growing up at the cabin because we're not quite that far along. But it'll be fun to get some shots out there in the future with Toby. One of the last things we had to do up at the cabin is get the boat lift and the docks out, and so here's the boat trip. We had to bring that to the boat landing so we can get that out of the water. That's my brother's boat. He let my dad drive it, and Toby was on the controls of the drone, and I was just there for a joyride. Take a peek. The bonsai bench with the shade cloth is looking pretty good. We're getting a lot of extra sunlight this season with the incredible weather, It is Halloween tomorrow, and we still have everything out on the bench, and the highs in the 60s. It's been so phenomenal. Up on top, it's a little bit too dark to see those guys up there, but we've got some of our elm forest still with green leaves on there. Like Tony Aster has dropped 50% of its leaves. And then we've got all of our boxwoods down here, and we have some of the larch that haven't completely changed colors. But the benches this season, what a great growing season. Again, everything's preparing itself for the spring now, so not really pushing out new growth per se, but it's just storing up all that energy. And I think this year these trees are going to just be full of energy. We should have a really good push in the springtime. One of the last things we did up at the cabin, my son loves to keep busy, so we were up there going, hey, what should we do next? We downed 4 trees, and we did get footage of a couple. So here's Toby and I having fun getting rid of some dead trees up at the cabin.
When your son says, Dad, I don't need a chainsaw. I don't need a saw. What if I just do this?
Here it goes! Oh, it twisted and it missed every tree. That was good.
Well, there's the cabin trip, fall of 2022, October 28th and 29th. Temps in the 60s up at the cabin. That time of year is just pretty special and pretty rare. The warmest and nicest I've ever closed down the cabin for the season. So my thanks to Toby for all the drone footage, and it was just a fantastic time to hang up there and look at all the trees and be up there in the forest and just get away from all the leaf blowers, for instance. So we're going to wrap things up here. We got a couple of things done, some trees moved. We've seen some updates. The sphagnum moss is drying out. The leaf blowers are going crazy. So let's just say goodbye right now. We got a whole lot more to do for other episodes, so we'll cut this one right here. Yeah, it's just getting loud. All right, take care of you. Take care of your bonsai, and we'll catch you on the next one.